Some films were harmed in the making of this podcast. From Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and the Palatial FYC Studios, you're listening to All Things Considered.
The podcast where we ask you to consider all things as opposed to bringing you a single classic for your consideration. I'm your host, Dustin Friesenand.
And I'm your host, Mike Josick. We'd like to give a shout out to anybody catching the show on YouTube, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and if you're downloading or streaming the show off of iTunes while you're there, we'd really appreciate it if you rated and or reviewed the show, as that gets us a little bit more attention in the Apple algorithms and gets the show out into the eyes and ears of people who might be interested in checking us out. If you've caught the show previously, welcome back. And if this is your first time listening to us, be warned, spoilers ahead.
As promised last week, we are sort of doing a semi-anniversary thing, sort of a double anniversary, a double anniversary, because it's our 2-year anniversary, is it?
Well, this episode won't be coming out on our actual 3rd anniversary.
That doesn't matter. It is our anniversary for, yes, the 3rd anniversary is pretty close, and we've got The Thing. John Carpenter's The Thing was our most popular episode ever on YouTube for whatever magical reason, and it's its 2-year anniversary, so double anniversaries, including 1 2 years. So I'm going to go a double.
We've been wanting to talk about the 2011 version of The Thing for a while, probably since we did the original it's so tempting to say original 82 version, but it's not the original. We've been wanting to talk about it at least since discussing the 82 John Carpenter version, and just kind of never really had an opening for it, and we just thought it's kind of time to get into it.
To get into which film again?
Well, you already introduced The Thing, so as Dustin said, this week on the show we're going to be covering the 2011, although it's weird because it says 2010 Universal Studios on my Blu-ray.
And everything else says 2011.
Yeah.
I'd just say 2011 thing, and then I'll do my little dumber spiel.
It says it came out in 2011. So, as Dustin was implying, on this week's episode of the podcast, we're going to be talking about the 2011 remake prequel, The Thing.
AKA The Thing, which wasn't the original Thing, which also itself wasn't the original Thing. This Thing is the prequel to The Thing, which is sort of a remake of The Thing because it takes so many things from The Thing when it should have done its own thing.
I like that. That works well. Works very well. So since this is an episode of All Things Considered, and we did kind of touch on this the last time we did an ATC episode, I just wanted to reiterate before we get into the discussion of the movie proper that we've kind of tweaked the format for All Things Considered episodes yet again. The concept, the whole point of it was to kind of make a more open review show where we can talk about movies that weren't specifically on the Sight and Sound list. My own sort of OCD didactic approach, I always had to have some sort of format, even if it was alternative to the or working in opposition to the show's regular format. I still needed a format. We're embracing a non-format format officially now. Like when we
finally
when we do, which Dustin has been championing since day one. But essentially we're going to use ATC episodes to do whatever we want. If we want to talk about a movie like The Thing, if we want to talk about a newly released film, if we want to say, hey, there's this movie and it's a remake, let's talk about both of them. Or
if we want to talk about which flavor Lay's chips we like best, we will hit you up on All Things Considered.
We probably won't do that.
Mike won't let it fly.
But yeah, so that's kind of the new thing going forward. We're going to still try and we're at least going to try to have, one ATC episode a month to go along with the regular FYC episodes, which is kind of what we were trying to do previously. But now it's just, we've got sort of the looser format. So,
and we're trying to get back on board with the schedule and everything. We'll get there. We'll get back to it.
We will get there. And as I like to do, I usually just like to point out the media upon which we viewed the film that we're discussing. And I'm not sure how to put this because I'm looking at the date on my Blu-ray. I'm watching The Thing Blu-ray. It's the first pressing of this thing when it first came out. It says 2010 Universal Studios, and everything else says this movie came out in 2011.
So maybe this is like a coin that was minted with the wrong date, and it's worth tens of $1,000s to crazy collectors.
Highly doubtful. But regardless, it is the Blu-ray DVD combo of The Thing. It's the only edition that's out there. So there you go.
Because nobody cares for more.
Nobody cares for more. So let's run the credits on this movie, and we will get to the discussion.
And see if we care.
So The Thing was directed by Matthijs van Heijningen Jr. It was produced by Mark Abraham and Eric Newman. It was written by Eric Heisserer. It was based on Who Goes There by John W. Campbell, which is going to be one of the problems I think we're going to discuss. It starred Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Joel Edgerton, Ulrich Thompson, Adewale Akinyoye Agbaje, and Eric Christian Olsen. Music was by Marco Beltrami. Cinematography was by Michel Abramovitz. It was edited by Julian Clark and Peter Boyle. It was distributed by Universal Pictures, released October 14th, 2011, and the film was pretty much a critical and commercial failure. This is not a loved film. It missed the mark for a lot of viewers.
Though the friends who I saw it with, they really enjoyed it.
And yeah, that's something that we're kind of going to discuss. It's going to be one of the main points, I think, that we discuss in a lot of ways, because I had the same reaction. When I went to see this in the theater, I saw this with my daughter, actually, and we both walked out of the theater having enjoyed it. It was a little derivative, but we were like, yeah, that was fun. We enjoyed that. That was great. Blu-ray comes out. I buy the Blu-ray, I watch it a couple more times, still enjoying it, still wondering why people are hating on this movie. And then we're revisiting it today for this episode.
With our critical glasses on.
Well, I mean, my critical glasses are usually on, but something about this viewing, the stuff that I really loved about this movie, still hold.
It still has some very good ideas in it, and they did some things very well. The biggest problem with it goes back to it being based on Who Goes There. If by it being based on Who Goes There, it means it's based on the John Carpenter's The Thing, which was based on Who Goes There, then that's accurate.
It really brings up that question of, is this a remake or a prequel, or what is it? Because they sell it as a prequel. The whole film takes place at Thule Station. It takes place at the Norwegian Antarctic Research Station, which is where the characters from the 82 Thing go and find the bodies frozen in the ice and the videotapes and all that stuff. It shows you
how all that stuff gets there, and this film ends where John Carpenter's begins, which was
literally,
very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. They even incorporated some of Carpenter's footage, which was very nice. But
doing a prequel that's also a remake is highly problematic.
Like, there's doing nods to the original. And the nods that they do, I can appreciate. When they set up certain events, when they set up certain areas, where it's like, oh, okay, this is what they found in the original, that's perfectly fine. But when they basically do a shot-for-shot remake of certain scenes that happen in John Carpenter's, now you're doing a remake. Only it doesn't sit as well, because we know.
Explaining how the guy in the radio room ended up slitting his throat and dying frozen in that chair, explaining why the axe is in the wall, explaining the block of ice in the room, explaining,
the two-faced creature in the snow, and
all those little things, all the reverse engineering that they did. Totally respect that. I didn't love absolutely everything they did in that respect, but I don't think I would have cared if there weren't so many, I want to say direct lifts, but they weren't really lifts so much as kind of readapting the source material and kind of also adapting, like, both Who Goes There and the 82 Thing. The scene where they're burning the bodies and talking around the burning bodies about what they're going to do, totally lifted.
The scene where they have the test and they start doing the test, but then one of them turns into the Thing and starts attacking people while the flamethrower is not quite working, giving the Thing enough time to attack some people and take them out before it finally gets taken out by the working flamethrower. I mean, come on. Come on.
And the moment where the glass breaks and the Americans sneak in and they're like, oh, somebody's here, they're inside. And they go and there's a little standoff. It's very much like when they locked MacReady out and MacReady breaks the window and comes in through the storage room. Only instead of standing there pointing the flamethrowers at each other, MacReady's got the flamethrower with the stick of dynamite shivering in the cold.
Though an innocent also tries to charge at them and gets shot in the head accidentally out of panic.
Which is very much like Clark's death.
So it's just, it's too much. There's references And as you said, the reverse engineering is great. The fact that they bring in Americans in a way that makes perfect sense in context of the film, so that they're all speaking English, but then at the very end having a couple, including Lars, who doesn't speak any English, so that it sets up the beginning of John Carpenter's film perfectly. I appreciate all of that detail, 100%. But then to remake so many scenes, and there are so many. There's way too many.
And this movie, it tends to devolve into an action movie, into the boo scares, and
almost instantly it does that.
And
within 20 minutes.
And that would be fine, because we're sitting here and arguing that this movie needs to be its own movie. So, much in the same way that Aliens is a different movie from Alien, or Starship Troopers 2 is a different movie from Starship Troopers, The Thing could have totally been a different movie from The Thing. But because they're making all of those homages, because they're flat out copying scenes from the previous film, it has far too much connective tissue or DNA, so you judge it based on what the 82 thing was. You watch this movie and you go, it
didn't want to be its own film. It wanted to be us.
It's unsuccessfully a suspense film. It's unsuccessfully an action horror. It lives in this limbo space in between, and it never quite hits the tone I think it wants to hit. And I think everybody wanted to hit that tone of that original Carpenter film, but I think the temptation to give things a little bit more punch, go for a little bit more of the scares. I mean, there's so many techniques, and this is something that doesn't surprise me at all when I saw the Morgan Creek logo, because Morgan Creek has, for years, been actively trying to wreck the Exorcist franchise and has had their fingers in other films which they actively wreck. And the way that usually happens is they're trying to appeal to a youth audience, and they're trying to go for the jugular, sort of as it is. And in this movie, it moves quickly. It has shaky cam. The shaky cam does not do a good job of portraying sort of tight, suspenseful moments, because it's active. It's active and it's agitated, and suspense needs to be calm, and it needs to creep up on you.
It's not that it was shaky cam in that you couldn't tell what was going on half the time, but there'd be moments where they're talking about the test, for example.
Not just moments, the whole film. The whole film, there was slight movement to the camera at the very least. It had a handheld aesthetic to it.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
Okay. And I felt that really was a detrimental technique to be using if you were going to be going for that looming, heavy, sort of oppressive suspense that the 82 thing did so well. Also the music. The moment where they're checking everybody's mouths and they're testing to see who's got fillings. There's some great stuff in there. I love the line that Adam has where he's like, so I'm going to die because I've flossed my teeth.
I like that she figures out, hey, wait a second, fillings, the titanium inside the one guy's bones that was removed from the body, it can't reproduce that, so that becomes its own new test. That's a way of having something that's your own within the film that I definitely appreciated. That was some smart writing right there.
But because that scene echoes a scene from the 82 thing, even though it tries to do its own thing, it's still echoing that 82 film where Kurt Russell is putting the hot wire in the petri dishes with the blood. And because everybody knows that at a certain point he puts it in at an unexpected moment and the blood jumps and everything goes crazy, they know that the audience is waiting for one of the people to all of a sudden start splitting heads and doing whatever. And the music telegraphs that. Throughout the entire scene, Beltrami keeps building and building, and the music is like, da-da-da-da-da-da, and it's telling you, this could be it, this could be the time, this might be the thing, and then it's not the thing.
It's bad enough that it's right after the test that they were working on gets completely sabotaged, just like in the first one. And yeah, I can't help but keep calling it the first one, or the original.
I know, it's so hard.
You don't know which one to call it. John Carpenter's.
But don't telegraph what the audience should be feeling, especially in a moment like that where you're trying to really hammer home the suspense. Take the music right out so that you don't know what to feel except for what you're seeing.
All you have is the oppressive quiet, the pure atmosphere. You might as well start playing yakety sax over certain things. It's like... Stop telling me this is funny. Just putting yakety sax over a fast motion sex scene doesn't make it funny. Not comedy.
And things happen at a really rapid pace in the movie as well. Like in the original Thing, we were talking about the scene where the Thing basically thaws out, comes alive, bursts out of the ice cube, and goes out the roof. The way it's played very much, again, for scares. There's a character there, someone comes up behind him and says, "Boo!" That's the scare that's supposed to release the tension for you so that you're not prepared when the actual big noise and alien creature comes bursting through. A much more effective way to have played that scene would have been to have the character go in, look at the Thing, just to give you the sense that it's melting, and then maybe as he walks back to the room where everybody's partying, he thinks he hears a noise, and he's like, whoa, 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 shush, shush, like everybody stop singing and whatever, and then they hear a louder noise, and then they all run, and the Thing is empty. The ice cube is empty. It's hard to use the Thing. So, essentially, they don't know what they're looking for. They don't know what was in there. They don't know if it's alive. They don't know what's happened. So it's not all of a sudden, let's chase the creature moment. It's that foreboding thing again. And the Thing could be picking them off one by one, and it just gives you a much better sense of the unknown and the paranoia, whereas this was just, creature comes out, and it's like, how many people got infected that first fucking hour of the movie? Like
you said, the pacing is very fast. From that moment, it is pure action. They're constantly chasing it around. You look at John Carpenter's, the dog makes it there on that first day. You see the dog walking around, going to someone's room. You're not necessarily sure exactly what's going on, but it's there for a day or two at the very least. So anyone could have been infected during that time. Whereas here, it jumps out, it attacks one person who gets partially eaten, and they burn the whole building down. But somehow there's already 2 or 3 people who are infected. Where? When? How did that happen? You feel like the timeline's already messed up, and they're just arbitrarily declaring people are the Thing.
One of the things we discussed on our previous Thing episode was the timeline of when people get assimilated. And ultimately, we kind of agreed that you don't really care. You can kind of assemble and cobble together based on just sort of the order of when things get revealed to you, and there's only certain pockets of time where you can kind of go, well, that's probably when it happened.
But there are those pockets of time,
exactly.
And that's what's so important.
So it's vague, but it's satisfying. Whereas this one, it happens in such a compressed amount of time. When did Griggs get assimilated? And they make the comment about the chopper door. When did you leave that open? And he's like, I don't remember. So did Griggs get assimilated when he was in the chopper?
If whoever was who was assimilated who made that mess in the shower, why is there a mess in the shower? The Thing is initially sort of putting the one guy into an amniotic sac to multiply him. If that's how it happens, then why would he walk over to the shower and then leave a big pile of blood there, as opposed to leaving a trail of blood up to the shower? And if it happened in the shower, why was the Thing being that quiet and sneaky at that point, but then attacking people so viciously at other times?
And it might have been Juliet in the shower. It might have been Griggs in the helicopter. It might have been Juliet in the shower. We don't know when Edvard becomes the Thing, but it does seem arbitrary. And
everyone was also together from the moment that What's-His-Face comes by shouting about the Thing. Everyone is together. There's not enough time for people to be alone to be assimilated.
Because of the pacing of the movie. I was saying this movie could definitely have used an extra 10 minutes of just character stuff. Just kind of moments to let you feel sort of that time elapsing, which Carpenter's film did. But because you keep seeing all of these scenes with all of these groups of people together, and there's no quiet moments, and you've got the shaky cam, which is giving it a sense of urgency and panic, it lacks some coherence in that respect.
And another thing that is a big problem when it comes to prequels in particular, good old sequelitis, it has to be more, which doesn't always make sense, because why is the Thing this much more aggressive in the prequel? It's doing the sneaky thing and the aggressive thing. Why is it not doing that in John Carpenter's?
More aggressive than sneaky, though.
Oh, more aggressive than sneaky. But it's doing all sorts of things all at once, and when it's jumping around, it's detaching itself, it's reattaching itself, it's absorbing people. It's suddenly got more powers than it did, or than it will have, in the next film, in spite of everything that it's learnt. even when it's down to 1 or 2 people, that it could have easily taken out because nobody's really got weapons in that one.
And we did kind of explain that away.
You can say that, yes, the action didn't work this time, so it's going to try a different method. And you could also say that maybe, well, the guy who did the quick but thorough test on the DNA decided he was also going to lick the Petri dish, and that's when he was infected, and he infected a couple people before letting everybody know at the party. That could be your excuse right there, but it doesn't quite work. And if the thing touching... But
Sander was the one who was doing the blood test or whatever, the inspect, like the first analysis. That's the word I'm looking for. And Sander doesn't get assimilated until the end by the Edvard creature.
I'm going to admit right now...
You don't know the names.
I don't know the names. There are so many more people in this film running around, and yeah, they're all running around all the time. I find a lot of remakes, a lot of sequels, they have more characters just so more characters can die. And they become a lot more forgettable to me. Why do I care about half these people who, because now you have 6 more people, they might have half as many lines, 1/3 the personality at best. So you remember, oh, I remember that guy because I know the actor. Oh, I remember that guy because he's a complete asshole. I remember that guy because he's a smarmy douche. Then there's 4 other people, and what do you do?
Let's take this opportunity. You're talking about the cast. Let's take this opportunity to talk about something we really like about this movie. I love the cast. I love the people in this movie. I love the fact that they went for a Norwegian cast, primarily Norwegian cast. I love the fact that Mary Elizabeth Winstead is in this because I love Mary Elizabeth Winstead. And I love the fact that, and this was probably a tribute to, or an asset for the film, the Norwegian actors were all kind of superstars in Norway because there's only so many people in Norway, like 4 million people. So their talent pool is much smaller, and they got basically, someone referred to this as like the Ocean's 11 of Norwegian actors kind of thing. All the big names, and they've all been in films together previous to this, so they all had their own kind of rapport and were all able to act, together and off of each other because they all had kind of a relationship prior to the film. And then you have the way that the Norwegian actors are relating to the American actors, and there's a little bit of a divide, which makes perfect sense. And the character dynamics in the film are actually quite good, and the actors are quite good. They're just not necessarily working with the best script, per se. I'd love to read the original shooting script from Eric Heisserer, because this is the guy who wrote The Arrival.
Which is a fantastic film. I recommend that to everybody.
Stunningly good movie. This is a guy that approaches sci-fi, and he's also a huge fan of the 82 thing. He approaches sci-fi, kind of brains first. So I sort of feel like the script might have more of what we were looking for. I could be wrong. I'll probably hunt it down after we're done this. But I'm very curious.
You figure, given the production company that was much maligned by you already, that it might have been too much producer influence messing around with it?
It could be. And Matthijs van Heijningen, not a big Hollywood name. So here's a guy who, I think he got a lot of the things he wanted. He got the Norwegian cast. He got a lot of really dark scenes. He kept telling the cinematographer, Michelle Abramovitz, darker. There's no light sources. We have to go darker. And he was just like, can't do that. He was resisting it, but they went dark. This is a very dark movie. I think because he got those things, when the studio was like, well, we want a little bit of this or we want a little bit of that, it was like, well, sure, of course, because you've been so accommodating. But he also didn't have a ton of leverage, so he couldn't just be like, fuck you, it's my movie. We're doing this way.
That'll get a no-name ass fired from a cannon into the sun.
And I think that give and take probably created a relationship between the studio and the filmmakers that was amicable. So changes were probably made without a lot of resistance for both reasons. Probably because they got along, and also probably because he didn't have a lot of pull. But
this is also a lot of
conjecture.
Yeah,
but it's clear that the intention was there. The intention was definitely there.
And we've seen other works these people have done which have far more quality, and thus we have more faith in them than we do the production company, which has apparently farted out a crap ton of garbage. Not that I could actually name anything else they've done. Mike can.
What did you think of the cast? I know you also championed the Norwegian cast.
I've never had any issues whatsoever with any of the acting or the cast in this, and I always loved the fact that they went with Norwegians. The fact that I didn't feel like the inclusion of an American was too out of place. I often feel in remakes or sequels and Hollywood versions of stuff where it takes place somewhere where there shouldn't be any American actors, that it feels so wrong. It's very whitewashed. I noticed that a whole heck of a lot. But here, it made sense that, we need a very specific expert to get this out of the ice. And as you said, Norway is not the biggest country in the world, and the guy is doing his work in the States, and that's reasonable enough.
And his research assistant was Adam, who was an American, and Adam knew Kate.
So you get a little bit of
and it was time
nepotism.
Sensitive. They didn't have time to go looking around the globe for like the best expert or whatever. They went with someone that they thought they could trust and that they could get.
And that gives you the reason for everybody speaking in English for our benefits, the audience. Because I also always appreciate any film where people speak in their natural language. So many will be like supposedly set in Japan and everybody speaks English the entire time, even when one person specifically is a gaijin that nobody really talks to. They're all going to speak in English around him and amongst their own families, which doesn't work. The Godfather speaking in Italian, it makes perfect sense.
I liked how the Norwegians would talk Norwegian to each other, specifically to not have like Kate know what they were talking about.
There's one specific point where I believe it was Lars. Well, somebody was holding a flamethrower to some of the Norwegians who didn't have fillings, and they're trying to convince him in Norwegian, no, don't listen to her, we got to go outside, the real enemy's outside. And she's saying, no, whatever they're saying, we can't trust them.
That was Peter with the flamethrower.
Peter with the flamethrower, yeah. I don't know anybody's names. I know one actor, and I recognize another actor. That's about the best I can say for this film. I apologize.
I do love that line that Edvard has in that scene where he's like, she's very clever, and now she is in charge. Those are the kind of moments where I feel, A, there's good writing, B, there's good acting, and C, there's a potential for a good, suspenseful, apocalyptic, paranoid, alien assimilation film. And then it goes a little bit batshit crazy. I feel like all the ingredients are there.
And the setup for stuff is natural when it comes to going into the 82 thing. It's just the stuff that it doesn't borrow, the stuff that it outright steals is a huge detractor in this. And then once again, the punching up of the thing and its abilities, giving it sort of more powers. Now if it touches you, it can absorb you and assimilate you damn near instantly. And to an extent that makes sense. If it's on a cellular level, it should be able to just touch your hand and infect you, and then you slowly change over a period of whatever time. But that's not what we have. That's not what we've been given in the original.
You know as well as I do there are too many variables.
Open your mouth. Open your mouth!
They're porcelain.
Go stand by Adam. Anyone else with porcelain fillings? Or clean teeth?
I'm going to go right into my sort of final words here and say that my friends who I saw this film with really enjoyed this movie. They came out, they had a lot of fun. And I said, yeah, it was fun, I guess, but it was no John Carpenter's The Thing. And that's the real issue with this film. If you've never seen John Carpenter's version, then this is a perfectly passable film. The biggest flaws with it, you're not going to notice because you didn't know. But if you are a fan of The Thing, then The Thing is not going to get you.
Because it's those moments that are echoes of the 82 version that ultimately sort of deep-stakes this one, that create the comparisons that you're actively trying not to make.
Otherwise, it's a perfectly passable action alien film. As you said, there's a lot of derivative stuff, but it's not by any means bad. It's just run-of-the-mill at worst. And as you said, it does have a lot of good points of good writing, so it's definitely above average, but it's far below The Thing. And because it keeps remaking and referencing, you're constantly being reminded of a better film. And that's not a good idea.
And what was up with the helicopter? The moment in the helicopter. It's another perfect example of a little bit of a sleight of hand, where they've got the one character who looks sickly and unpleasant and he's not doing well. And the other character's like, hey, no, everything's fine. The helicopter is landing again. They were taking off to leave, and the helicopter is landing again because they were getting waved down. And this is when the Thing chooses to reveal itself, crashing the helicopter. And he attacks the guy across from him. He doesn't attack the pilots because, of course, the pilots have to survive in order to be in the rest of the movie. But they want a moment where the Thing is doing the Thing things. And it made no sense. And that was very frustrating. And I wanted to get...
somehow the Thing dies, but the Americans were good.
Or does the Thing die? They don't know if the Thing's dead.
It's almost as though it sort of set itself up for something else, because certainly What's-Her-Face lives at the end.
One of the interesting things about this movie, actually, is in the 82 version, they're very careful about sort of destroying every sort of piece of the Thing that they find, because Blair is very insistent that even one drop of blood from this creature, and it's still alive, and it can still go. So they're very particular about it. And
There's a lot of blood and body parts left around.
Yeah, in this movie, things are scattered all over the place. So the Thing might still be alive in a crashed helicopter out there somewhere. I mean, maybe they went into this thinking, well, perfect sequel fodder, you know?
The blood on the axe on the wall, that's the Thing's blood.
So many things. So many things.
They did go on the alien ship, though, which you and I appreciate.
Yeah, I appreciated that, too. I was glad to see it. I think they sacrificed some of the suspense to go on the alien ship for running time.
And they sacrificed some suspense by trying to create suspense, having the Thing come up behind the lead actor super slow instead of just attacking her outright like it had been doing very successfully, I might add, up to that point.
That was another moment where it would have been so much better if it was about to hit her with the tendril like it's hit 3 other people previous to this, but maybe she hears a scrape or something on the floor and she just kind of instinctively, moves to the left or the right and the tendril comes out. I think that would have been so much more suspenseful and so much more realistic, but instead, yeah, it's acting so out of character because it's suddenly like a B-movie sci-fi monster.
That has to get a bit of screen time so that we can see the cool special effects.
Yeah, and they were very purposeful about having Sanders' face on the creature because they wanted Kate, who's been clashing with Sander for the entire film, they wanted her to defeat him in Thing form to give that conflict closure.
Or you could say that it was very similar to the reveal of the Blair thing.
Yeah. I mean, when I say that, the director specifically said in the commentary that it was a late-stage change to the concept because they wanted to give that closure for that narrative. So I'm not just pulling that out of my ass. That is totally, 100% legit canon. I do love the scene at the end with Carter and Kate, where she tortures him in the snowcrawler. It's a pretty bleak ending. You don't know if she's going to make it to the Russian outpost. You don't know where she might die. You don't know.
Given that we've seen ostensibly the sequel, I'd say it's we kind of do.
Well, she doesn't necessarily end up at Outpost 31. We have no idea if she survived. Maybe she met up with Mulder and Scully at the end of Fight the Future and helped them get home. But that's 20 years apart.
What if the X-Files had a bit of a time warp? It wouldn't be the first time.
That's very true.
I actually don't even know if that's true. I was just betting on it.
There's a couple time travel episodes. So you give your final thoughts. I guess I'll give my final thoughts on this movie.
I had a lot more thoughts apparently after the final ones, but we'll just ignore this. Classic Dustin.
Eager to start, quick to finish.
Oh, I'll have to get Kufre to weigh in on that one.
That was a Kingdom of the Crystal Skull reference for anybody who cares.
All three of you.
As I said at the beginning of the show, I like this movie in the theater. I liked this movie when it came out on home video. It's starting to lose some of its luster, and I'm not entirely sure why I'm less forgiving of it. Maybe I'm just expecting a little bit more from my entertainment right now. Who knows? But all the problems that we've pointed out, all the pros and cons, are still there, you know. Still love the cast, still love the cinematography, love the production design. There's some really good stuff in the script, a lot of potential.
You love the music when they discover the spaceship.
Yeah, there's a couple of music cues that are just amazing, and then there's other places where there's just too much music and it's just overdone. It's an unbalanced movie. It's an unbalanced movie that, like you said, it makes you think too often of the 82 movie, doesn't have the courage, doesn't have the confidence to stand on its own as its own thing. It leans into the previous thing.
And now we've gone full circle to the Demery.
Yeah. So, yeah, very middle of the road. I think Rotten Tomatoes or IMDb or somebody has this at like, it's a 5 out of 10. Everybody's kind of very much giving this real middling kind of reviews.
No, I'd say at least a 6 out of 10. Come on now, guys.
I'd probably go 6, 6.5. I think 7 would be a little too generous.
It goes in museum piece. It's something that you can look at to see what went wrong.
Well, I mean, it never would have been classified.
I always classify.
You always do, I know.
Even when I refuse to classify, I classify.
Part of the ATC non-format format is we don't have to classify anything if we don't want to. But
if you don't have to, that's the point.
I can't stop you. I can't stop you. I can only edit it out later.
And I would never know.
So
I wouldn't remember. Because I wouldn't remember. Or hear it. But I wouldn't remember either.
So basically, an inoffensive but unimpressive sci-fi action horror that we wouldn't necessarily recommend, but we wouldn't dissuade you if you wanted to watch it.
Though I would say, instead of watching this, there's another thing out there which is better.
Are we talking about the Thing from Another World? Or the 82 thing?
I can't comment on the Thing from Another World yet.
Because you haven't seen it yet.
Yet.
Actually, you know what? Well, okay, this relies entirely on having seen the 82 version again. In one way where the way they lean into it is really successful is the end credits, where they dovetail it with Lars getting in the helicopter.
Oh, it's perfect.
And chasing the dog.
Perfect.
It fills you with such a feeling of, like, joy, because all of a sudden you feel like you're in a better movie.
They have Carpenter's score, they have some of his shots, they have the setup.
Yeah, they're playing that amazing Ennio Morricone music.
If you ever want to see this film, see it before you ever see John Carpenter's version. Watch them back to back even. I would like to know someone's opinion on John Carpenter's film having seen this one first. All those same scenes, would it be like, John Carpenter's is wait a second, it's not using those scenes because that was but I saw it already, so is that taking it away from me? Huh?
Right? Right? It's almost a similar situation to, like, the Star Wars prequels in the original trilogy.
Hey-oh!
Well, I mean, it's ultimately the problem with any prequel or sequel. So
no, it's true. It's the problem with any prequel is having that connective tissue without having that connective tissue be so much that it's a cancer.
And that's our elliptical roundabout thoughts about The Thing from 2011. Matthijs van Heijningen's The Thing, as opposed to John Carpenter's The Thing. We would love to know what you guys think. You can let us know on Facebook, on Twitter. You can either search us at For Your Consideration, or we have the handle at FYC Show. We are on Instagram, and we got a WordPress blog, which we actually just posted a review of The Mule, courtesy of Dustin.
I'm being encouraged to write. No one's being encouraged to read, though.
We're definitely trying to add more to the blog, and your visiting the blog will definitely encourage us to create more content for the blog. So it's kind of a feedback loop, which
causes a lot of headaches because feedback is bad on a stereo.
If you want to support the show, like and share us on all the different platforms and social media and whatnot. And if you want to support us a little more robustly financially, help keep the lights on, help us develop better and more frequent content. We have a Patreon campaign webpage. Go there, check us out, become a patron of the show, and we got some reward levels that we think are interesting. Join the folks who are already doing it.
And we're not saying kill all of our competition, but we're not saying it. I, however, am saying don't kill all our competition. It's Mike who didn't say that, so if anyone ever comes back to this, Mike's the one who didn't expressly say it.
I was trying to think of a response, and all I could think of was, the thing of it is, this is the thing. I think that actually is a really good summary for this movie. The thing of it is, this is the thing. So join us next time when we will very likely have a guest who has requested to come on the show and discuss The Big Lebowski. So The Big Lebowski will probably be our next episode unless we have some scheduling problems, in which case I will have to pick another movie.
And he will post some sort of Twitter mention of it, and more than likely you'll just notice what the title of the next episode is when it comes out.
So there you have it. That's it for us this week. Thanks again so much for joining us. We'll see you next time on For Your Consideration. I've been your host, Mike.
And I've been your other host, Dustin. Take care.
Ta-ta.
The podcast featuring... the podcast where we bring you...
Where we ask you to consider all things.
I literally just said this like 2 seconds ago.
I know.
Normally it's you who messes this up.